If we take a look back at E3 2016, it's the year that Microsoft formally announced Project Scorpio, which would later become to be known as the Xbox One X. Phil Spencer took the stage that day and said that Project Scorpio would have high-quality, premium VR experiences. And well, when you fast forward a year later to the launch of the X, it certainly didn't, and the system never supported VR, which is one of the biggest disappointments people had with the X. It could do all these great things, run all these games in 4K, best looking versions of multiplats, yada yada yada. But one of the first promises of that system never came true. So people have always asked, is VR coming to Xbox? What about Project Scarlett, the new system that Microsoft is making for next generation? And the answer's always kind of been maybe, who really knows? Probably not. But according to a couple patents, it seems that Microsoft is certainly thinking about having VR for Project Scarlett, and maybe it will happen, and I thought it would be something to talk about. What's going on, guys? Randall Thor 19, Man with the Million, back again with another video. I hope everybody is having a fantastic Monday, and if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit that like button and consider subscribing to the channel for future content. Now, VR and how it applies to Xbox has kind of always been a sore subject, especially considering Phil Spencer said the X would have it, and then it didn't. You know, PSVR is pretty damn cool. I've used it. It's definitely an incredible experience on how to enjoy a game differently than normal. However, the tech is pretty expensive. Even when you wear the headset, there's a whole bunch of wires everywhere. Maybe it's not ready for the mass market yet. However, when you come out and say that your product's going to support VR and then it doesn't, a lot of people will hold you to that, say that you're lying. And it's something that I'm sure Team Xbox has been thinking about. And according to these patents, it seems like they haven't stopped thinking about VR, and it's quite possible it could make a return in Project Scarlett. Now keep in mind, these are just patents. Sometimes companies just protect their technology, and these things may not show up next generation at all. It's just that's something Microsoft's thinking about, and they want to protect themselves. So who really knows if this is actually going to manifest itself for next generation? But it definitely shows that the engineers at Microsoft are thinking about it. And there's 3 patents I want to talk a little bit about today. First is a VR boundary mat. So according to the patent, it seems like this VR mat marks the edges of the map for the player. The VR headset appears to be connected to a console and a camera that sits on top of the TV. Now, that's interesting about a camera, considering last week we had the information coming out that Microsoft was working on a camera. People said I flipped out in that video because I thought it was going to be a Kinect situation, which I didn't want. I knew better than that. I knew obviously the camera would be for streaming and to be an accessory, right? But you definitely do need like a camera if you're going to do some sort of VR. So that's interesting to think about in that scenario. But here, if you're patenting a VR mat, obviously you're thinking about VR. And if Microsoft does VR for Project Scarlett, I can't imagine them doing it themselves like Sony does with PSVR. Maybe they allow Oculus to kind of connect to the system and you can play those games. They do seem to have a pretty good relationship with Steam. Maybe there's some way you can connect accounts and play some of your Steam VR titles on your Xbox Scarlett. Obviously, I'm just spitballing here, kind of throwing out different things that might work, because honestly, I don't think Microsoft will make a VR headset of their own like the PlayStation VR. And quite frankly, if I'm being truthful with you guys, if I'm being 100, I don't want Microsoft to create their own VR headset, because I don't want Microsoft to have to try and support their own VR headset and have their own developers that they've recently purchased, like Ninja Theory and Compulsion and In Exile and Double Fine. Some of those studios who have worked on VR to start making titles for VR. I'd rather have them all focus on making traditional games for the next-gen console and PC. I don't want them to waste any time, resources, manpower, and money on a VR unit right now. That's just my personal opinion. I know that may seem selfish. I'm sure there's plenty of you guys out there like, no, I want VR. That's kind of where I just stand, just so everybody knows. Now, the other patent they're talking about here is a motion controller. Yeah, motion control is great, right? Another patent suggests that the team is developing some sort of motion controller for the console. You may be able to use it with one hand, while the other has a directional stick. For example, you can move around with the thumbstick, but if you're using a sword, you have to replicate the motion. And it's very similar to what Nintendo did with the Wii. Now, obviously, some of the VR stuff, you would need some motion controls to go along with it. I mean, Microsoft, I can't really see this being a reality either, but who really knows? These patents, like I said, they protect the technology. It could be a precursor of something that does happen next generation, or it doesn't. And then the final patent here talks about a Xbox Stylus. So lastly, the same patent reveals that a Stylus may be in development for the upcoming console. This may allow you to play Nintendo DS-like games on the device and may lead to new experiences. So there we have it, guys, the 3 patents that recently have come to life. One being the Stylus, the motion controller, the VR boundary mat. Let me know in the comments below if you think any of these 3 are going to see the light of day with the next-gen console. Now, I know VR is obviously a big topic, and the boundary mat implies that they're thinking about it, but I can't see VR being something they launch Project Scarlett with. So I'm going to say at launch, there's going to be no VR. Not saying that 2 years down the road, they introduce it as some sort of accessory. I think that can possibly happen. And if that does happen, maybe they introduce a new motion controller, which is a way to kind of interact with those games. As for the Stylus, I don't know about that. I'm not really sure where that really fits into anything, but I'm interested in hearing what you guys have to say. You know, in a month from now, we have XO19. Maybe we learn more about these things. Maybe Microsoft gives us the name of the next-gen console, Project Scarlett, at XO19. It's only a month away. It's supposed to be a pretty big event. But anyways, guys, that is the video. I hope you really enjoyed it. If you did, make sure to hit that like button. Share this out on social media, maybe tell a friend about the channel. I'd appreciate that. Hit that subscribe button if you're new, and if you always want to be notified immediately when I drop new content, make sure you hit that notification bell. Thank you guys so much for watching. I greatly appreciate it, and I'll see everybody in the next video. Later, guys.